What am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Movies about musicians. Now playing A Star is Born, Judy, Walk the Line, Crazy Heart. Can I tell you a secret? I think you might be a podcast host. Welcome to Corona Cinema. I'm Leon Waite, and I'm joined as always by Ross.
Hello.
Matty.
Good evening.
And Mason.
You alright?
And we're starting this week with Ross's pick, A Star is Born, the 2018 version. A musician helps a young singer find fame as age and alcoholism sends his own career into a downward spiral. Directed by Bradley Cooper, who wrote the screenplay with Eric Roth and Will Fetters. It's the third remake of the original 1937 film, starring Cooper, Lady Gaga, and Sam Elliott, who were nominated for Best Actor, Actress, and Supporting Actor respectively. Received 8 Oscar nominations in total, including Best Picture, but only one for Best Original Song for Shallow, of course. Ross, why'd you pick this film?
So I've seen this film quite a few times and I love it. It's basically about a new star on the rise and an aging alcoholic who's basically going deaf. But it's really interesting to watch this romance like blossoming between the two. But basically whilst Jackson's life is falling apart. And what makes the film as well is the fact that there's an actual chemistry between the two mains, which you don't always get. But yeah, it's really interesting to watch how they both deal with what's going on, and it does deal really well with themes of alcoholism, substance abuse, and like mental health issues in the film, which I really like. But yeah, this film's not completely, but mostly performance driven. Like, you got fantastic performances all round from Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper, and Sam Elliott. They're all fantastic in the film, especially Lady Gaga. I think a performance like this is basically tailor-made for her as an actress, and she absolutely smashed it out of the park. And Sam Elliott, although he doesn't get a lot of screen time, he's really, really good in it. And surprisingly, Bradley Cooper actually has a really good voice. But yeah, it's on the subject of Bradley Cooper as well. It's a really good directorial debut from him. I mean, all round you got really cool cinematography in there as well, like up close and personal shots that are kind of quite dreamy as well, and the lighting, you got lots of lens flares and stuff. It's all really cool. But yeah, the film, its soundtrack, it's probably one of the best soundtracks of recent films, and Shallow is just such a great song that they've written for it. And yeah, I watched it so many times and I love it, and probably always will.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite trailers of all time. I remember seeing it for the first time, and at that point, my knowledge of film wasn't enough to be aware that this is like a storied, not franchise, but like this story has been told numerous times beforehand. Like there's loads of other versions of The Star is Born kind of story. So I thought this was an original thing. It's like, oh, Bradley Cooper's directing. Then as I watched the trailer and you get to the end and it's like, they brings up the names of who's in it. It's like, wait, what? That was Lady Gaga. Because I'd never ever seen it without makeup. And usually, as well as makeup, she's got some like crazy eccentric outfit on as well. So just for that point, I was like gassed for when this film was going to come out. Then the first watch was like blown away, like comfortably the best film I'd seen by that point that year. That was like October time. And this came out like roughly when I started working at the cinema. And I remember every time I go in to clean the screen after this film had finished, the Black Eyes, the song he plays at the start, would be playing. And that's just like a nice memory I have of like picking up rubbish while that was just blaring in the screen. One of the loudest songs that you get in the films. And yeah, Ross mentioned like Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, and it's like ridiculous what he was able to accomplish. I think the Academy didn't nominate him kind of as like, oh, you think you're big, yeah, you can just come in first time and do something like this. We're going to nominate you now. Sit down. We'll nominate you for actor, but not for director. But this is so well crafted. Like, I think obviously the Shallow scene is the standout scene, and the way he's able to still make it like an intimate scene, even though it's in a concert with thousands of people there, because he only one shot clearly shows like the crowd, whereas most of the time you either have like the lighting or the smoke obscuring the crowd, or the camera's just facing Jackson and Ali on stage. So he managed to somehow make it feel like quite an intimate scene, even though they're performing to thousands of people. And I really like as well, like the conversations they have when they're like building their romance is like, it's not like manicured kind of thing. Like, it's not Hollywood speech the way they're talking with each other. Like, he's got his hearing issues, so he's having to ask her to repeat things at certain points. He's doing really weird, like awkward stuff, like touching her nose and little details like that, which normally wouldn't have in a film, which I thought add to their chemistry. And kind of the main issue with the film is that the first hour is like so perfect, or like just under an hour, building up to Shallow, and then the drop off is pretty hard. Like, I think it's a bit stodgy from there on. And I think that's why some people were like, when this film was getting a load of praise, some people were like, what do you mean? Like, her, like the way her like pop star career is like handled really weirdly and stuff like that. Like, this wasn't as good after the Shallow scene, which is fair enough. Like, I'm still okay with it. Like, I don't really feel that when watching a film. Like, if something's good, and then something might not be as good afterwards, but oh well, we had that brilliant thing at the start. But yeah, this is a really, really impressive film, considering it's just like building on a story that's been told so many times beforehand. It feels fresh, it feels original. Matty, what was your first experience like with this film?
So yeah, I saw this film, I think maybe a year after it came out, and I was generally really impressed with it. I knew you guys all spoke quite highly of it, and you were the ones that pushed me to actually watch it, and I'm glad that I did, because I don't usually like songs that films that are usually music based. But then seeing Lady Gaga act in a film and then also produce the score was really interesting, because obviously she's, as a talented musician as she is, you would think then her acting wouldn't be as good, but it's still like a really, really good demonstration of that. And then on the flip side of that, watching Bradley Cooper, who is really famed for his acting capacity, I didn't even know he could sing, and then to come out and then produce all these songs as well is mad. And then, as Ross touched on, it's literally one of the strongest like scores for a film I think I've ever seen, or soundtracks, let me say scores, for a film, because I think they're all originals. I think some films do have better soundtracks, but that's because they're based off artists who are actual people. That makes them non-original soundtracks, which is fair enough. But all these songs are literally, each one is like as strong as the next, which is really interesting. And also the chemistry, as said, between Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, how much trouble that got them in, was obviously really convincing. And then I also just found out now by introduction that he also directed it, which is crazy. Lovely to combine the artist and the work. But yeah, it's kind of like a modern music industry romance, which I was also thinking in my head, a little bit naive, that it's like I thought like, oh, I haven't really seen like a story being told like this, but then as you said, it's like we've played before. It's just I haven't really watched those kind of things. But the what's it called? The way they present Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga going through their careers, but at different stages. Bradley Cooper coming to the back end, you see him slightly being put down to the lower roles rather than singing. He'll be then just be playing as like a support artist to younger blokes, and you're seeing Lady Gaga just rock it up, watching how they both deal with this. I think Bradley Cooper originally starts to get a little bit jealous, but you know, I can't really read too much into what he does, because everything that kind of troubles him, he just gets fucked up. Which then also leads on to the whole film, more or less, as in most musician stories are about, like struggle with alcoholism and drug dependency. So then it's quite refreshing in the fact that we see him, like, at least for a while, start to like make breakthroughs with it. He understands it as a problem, and he gets on the right tracks with things. It's just a shame about the ending, which then makes it punch a little bit harder. And then there's a lonely little thing in the film. I don't know if any of you guys picked it up, but like Bradley Cooper obviously blames himself for like everything he does and making Lady Gaga look bad. And then the reason he kills himself is because obviously he's going to ruin Lady Gaga's career, in his opinion. And then Rez Gavron, this dude, he was basically the main person that instigated Bradley Cooper killing himself in this film by making Bradley feel that guilt that he was holding Lady Gaga back, and she wouldn't even tell him that was the reason she cancelled her tour. She was saying, "Oh, I just wanted to cancel because it's not for me." Blah blah blah. I just thought that was like, that character really didn't like get enough. I would like to see his reaction, at least, to him killing himself, or just something to come back on that character, because it's not really fair what happened, and he just doesn't get any karma for it. But other than that, really, really strong film. And then obviously for directing for the first time, I think it's mad. It's mad. So yeah, I really praise the film quite highly.
Yeah, I think the guy who plays Rez, I don't think he's a great actor. The character wasn't that well written, as you say. And yeah, that scene where he basically says, "Bro, just kill yourself." Like, that's pretty bad. So that was one issue I had. And the only other real major issue I had was, like, I touched on it or like alluded to it earlier, like her like pop starification. Like, it's just a bit weird. Like, because at first she's not a confident singer. Like, she doesn't really want to sing her songs. Like, she's a bit nervous about it. Then all of a sudden she is. Like, they don't really develop that too well. And then, like, she doesn't want to change her image. And then, next scene, she's changing her image. She's changing her hair color, etc. And it's just really weird that Lady Gaga agreed for the script to go like this. Because, like, you can see the clear difference between Jackson's songs and Ali's songs. Like, I like all the songs, but I'm kind of aware that they're bad. Like, her songs, like, was it "Why Would You Do That to Me," whatever. Those, like, Hair, Body, Face, like, it's not good. They are not good songs, and that's deliberately done to show, like, oh, look how she just goes over to this cheap artificial pop star life. And that's like, it's like Lady Gaga, that's essentially what her career has been about. So I think it's a bit weird that she, like, was on board with the way the writing went at this film. Mason, is that something you noticed?
Yeah, like, at first I wasn't really sure, like, what the direction of the film wanted me to think about her whole pop career. But like you said, it definitely sort of portrays it in a bad light, because, like you said, her songs, that, like, I can still listen to them, but they're purposely not as good as Bradley Cooper's songs. And yeah, like you said, it seems almost like contradictory, because for, like, Lady Gaga's career herself, she is literally, like, solely a pop artist. I obviously understand that she's trying to sort of, like, revolutionize it and do it differently. But like you said, to accept a script of a film that sort of bashes what she done personally, yeah, it does seem a bit strange. But yeah, like you said, I think although we're told to not like the songs, it doesn't really matter. They're probably the weakest, like, of the bunch, but it doesn't matter too much, I don't think. like
how like he needed her more than she needed him. I thought that came across in the film. Like he's like, from the first time he sees her perform, like you can see he's like transfixed by her, and that's part of his performance. With like Bradley Cooper's performance is like incredible in this film. And when he drops her off, I think he asked her to come to his show, and she's a bit like reticent to come. And he's like, as they pull away, he's like, yeah, I think I fucked that up. Like instantly, he's kind of enamored with her. And over the course of the film, you sense that he needs her support more than she does, because she's actually talented, and you see that. And that was one of the issues I had with the 1937, the original version. Obviously, they're actors in that film, not musicians. So it's about an aging actor trying to let a young actress get into the industry, and they never show whether she's a good actress or not. Even by the end of the film, I still don't know whether she was actually a good actress, other than you telling me that she's winning awards and stuff, which is hard. Obviously, it's harder to convey that she's a good actress in a film when you're acting, whereas you could just show that Lady Gaga can sing and show that she's talented. I thought that was a weakness of that original film, and I didn't think they had as much chemistry as the two leads here. And so yeah, I want to move into talking about Bradley Cooper's performance. Ross, do you think this is his best? I thought it's pretty incredible transformation to be this guy who was once just an arsehole in like Wedding Crashers and The Hangover. Obviously had quite a game-changing decade. He did like Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, but even that wasn't a transformation like this. Like even the voice, the beard, everything. Obviously, Matty touched on his ability to sing. So were you impressed with his performance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, what he did, like the A-Team and whatnot, The Hangover and that, and it's just amazing how he has transformed into this like Hollywood megastar, like absolute A-list star. It's crazy because yeah, the transformation's crazy, and the fact that he can sing and to do this, it is really impressive, and it kind of adds another level to the film. Like there might be many issues with it, but because the performances are so good, especially from like Cooper and Gaga and Sam Elliott.
Yeah, a few grievances with the film. As you said, obviously her songs being at first just like what the industry wanted to hear, not what she had to say. Obviously being Bradley Cooper's main like word of advice. He said it nicely at first, and he got really drunk and said it horribly. But then that was never addressed again in the film. It almost was passed off that he was just being drunk. He had to go through rehab, and then when he got back, he had to apologize. And then it never touched on the fact that she needed to go through singing about what she actually felt. But yeah, she did release a song about losing Bradley Cooper, but then we don't know if she's just gonna go back to singing about shaking butts and stuff. So that was lost on a bit of character development for her. And also, they always do this in films where they call the main like lead that she's meant to be really ugly, and then she's not really ugly, but then they're saying, oh, it's blatantly obvious that she's really ugly and she's not going to get anywhere. And it's just annoying, if you know what I mean, because plenty of films do this. They're saying, oh, they're being treated mean because of this, because of that. Like, Mortal Engines is like my absolute hatred for this. Like, they get a perfectly good-looking actress and then just say, they put like a nick there and a nick there and say, oh, she's hideous. No, everyone's mean to her now. And they expect that to be like part of the defining character. So like, I don't like what they did. I mean, maybe the role was written for her, and her she always covers herself up in completely everything she can, like wearing microwaves on her head when she performs, like Lady Gaga. So maybe that's something that she liked from the character, but I just don't think that's something that really came across at all.
The only thing I'd say to that is, like, Lady Gaga actually experienced that when trying to break into the music industry. Like, they said, yeah, your nose is too big, you're not attractive enough, which obviously, like, she obviously is attractive, like, clearly, like, and any ordinary person could see that. But you can imagine, like, the music industry, and probably in Hollywood as well, like, it's very fickle and very judgmental. So that's the only like mitigation I'd have with that. Like, she actually experienced that, so it kind of makes sense for her character. But yeah, obviously, clearly in the film, like, she's peng. Like,
so maybe that's me misunderstanding like the music industry in Hollywood rather than me misunderstanding the film.
I think the sound editing and sound mixing for this film is really strong as well. Like, obviously, you've got Jax Maine who's losing his hearing, and the film plays on that so well throughout because he's like continuously asking like for people to repeat what they're saying and stuff like that. But one scene where I really saw the sound mixing that was really strong was when Jax Maine goes backstage at the drag bar, wherever it was. You've got everyone speaking in the background, but you can like just about hear him speaking to Lady Gaga like, enough. And yeah, I think it's something that I've started to like notice in films, like when it's done well and when it's not. And yeah, it just stood out immediately. And then as well, another thing of like the sound editing or just like creating like atmosphere and stuff is when she goes from her job to the stage. You've got that continuous like tapping noise of like, I think it's like drumsticks or some shit, I don't know. That's sick. It builds up so well, and then it plays directly from that into the song. And yeah, it just makes the film so much easier to watch and puts it at such like a higher standard, really.
okay, let's get some ratings. Start with you, Ross.
I mean, there's a few issues with the film, but overall, I think it is a great film. I gave it an 8.4.
Matty?
I also have gone with an 8.4.
Mason?
I think the hype this film like gave me before I watched it, and then I felt like it delivered when I first watched it. Yeah, I gave it an 8.8.
Yeah, I love it more than what I'd actually rate it. So I think it has problems, but I still love it anyway, in spite of those problems. But I gave it an 8.3. But most people seem to say that the 1954 version of A Star Is Born is the best one, and that starred Judy Garland and James Mason. We can segue into Mason's pick, which was Judy from 2019. Legendary performer Judy Garland arrives in London in the winter of 1968 to perform a series of sold-out concerts, directed by Rupert Gould and written by Tom Edge, starring Renee Zellweger, Finn Wittrock, and Jessie Buckley. Oscar-nominated for makeup and hairstyling, and Zellweger took home Best Actress. Mason, why'd you pick this film?
So I'm adamant this film was in the cinema for about a week here, because I feel like I had no time to watch it in cinema. So once the Oscar nominations were sort of like announced and stuff, I felt like I wanted to watch it beforehand to try and understand why she was going to win this Oscar. And I was kind of just intrigued to know more, I guess, about sort of Judy Garland's life and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, yeah, go on, I'll give it a watch. And first time I watched it, I was really hoping to like it, mainly because like I know Leon wasn't too interested in watching it, and I listened to a few podcasts where people kind of slated the film, and I was like, oh no, come on, I'm gonna have to enjoy this film. Watched it the first time, I thought it was alright. I thought it was better than what I was expecting. But when I watched it again yesterday, I saw so many problems with the film to where like my eyes were kind of definitely more open this time round. And it's just, I think it has a lot of issues really for me. I think Renee Zellweger's performance is incredible. And I think it's exactly sort of like what the Academy wants and why they nominate and award people for when they portray characters who they like love themselves. But other than her performance, really, not much else. There's not much else to say about the film that's good. Like, I know obviously I'm supposed to be gassing it up right now because I chose it, but it's kind of hard to when the best part of it for me was Renee Zellweger's performance, where I genuinely feel like every other actor and actress in that film did not deliver. I don't know, and I wouldn't even say it's because she delivered such a great performance. I just think it was because theirs just wasn't actually that strong. I like the vibe of the film. I enjoy sort of some of that. Do you say it got nominated for like hair and makeup and stuff? I think I enjoyed that. That was quite good. I thought it set the tone as to what period of time it was supposed to be in. The best parts of the film for me was probably the end, and like I think like the scenes when she's on stage sort of having like these breakdowns are probably like her best parts, and then the end scene is really good up until she gets interrupted by the two guys she had dinner with who sing the song with her. I think it gave this really cringy vibe to watch them stand up and help her like get over the finish line with this final performance. And then I was like, oh, I'm feeling a bit of emotion now. This is actually good. And then straight away I was just like, nah, dipped, like dead as soon as they stood up and finished the song for her. So yeah, I think there's a few things this film could have done better to be like executed in a better way. But all in all, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
I thought it was like perfectly watchable. I was never too hard to sit through, and I don't think it was too long. I think it came under 2 hours. And one little detail I liked was it's a bit on the nose, but like the touch of her asking for warm milk in the middle of the night, like her son did, because like what the movie's trying to say is like her childhood was so like carefully managed, so she's basically still a child at this point because she never experienced a proper childhood. And in terms of that aspect, and like the idea that the spotlight was on her for so long, and she was always told that she was special, and now people, well, in America at least, people don't care anymore. So it's hard to survive without the spotlight being on her. Like she doesn't have that attention, and that's been present all her life. So to take that away, you can obviously see why a person would struggle mentally with that. So in terms of those aspects, like it gets it across, but it's just not very original and just too like heavy-handed. Like you can't have that many flashbacks, I don't think, if you're gonna to do a biopic in this way. Like the young Judy, I thought she was pretty bad anyway, just as an actress. But like it's just like I don't think the flashbacks work when. So you're trying to comment on her personality, like in the present timeline, but you're doing that by showing precisely what influenced this in her childhood by showing a flashback. Like doing that the whole way through. Like I think it's just a bit messy and not like great writing together. But like you say, like it's kind of held together by a really good performance by Renee Zellweger. Like I never thought it didn't stray into. To be fair, I don't really know Judy Garland that well to know whether she was like doing an impersonation, but it never felt like she was doing it. But I felt like she was doing some good work there. But Matty, what did you make of it? Not a tremendously original story, but is it reasonably watchable for you?
I think if I was trying to describe this film, I think I would describe it as like something my mum would think would be really good, and then she'd put on and then decided she didn't like it, but I had to watch through it anyway. That's the kind of film that it gives me the vibe of. And her performance is literally really, it is stand out in the film. And it's probably contender for like best actor of the bunch here anyway. And I didn't really I couldn't place her face because obviously I know her really well from like Beatrice Potter and films like that. And obviously she's changed so much since then. It was almost like unrecognizable, that on top of the acting. But the story is quite interesting, like trying to like overcome like a destructively controlling childhood and like not being able to live life until you're older and then your life's not your own anyway. So you kind of sympathize with the character to a point, but then at the same time, she's very unrelatable, coming from a really kind of odd background. And then also she's like extremely like self-loving and entitled and kind of detached from normal day life, because she's so used to getting everything that she wants, more or less. So that's kind of like, I know it's a true story, so you can't really like be annoyed because that's how the person probably was. But then I'm not saying that it doesn't really make for a good film that I would enjoy, necessarily me. You usually want your protagonist to be, or at least your main character to be in some way relatable, and it seems to be a film of everyone is just looking out for their own interests. Like the new husband that comes along is looking out for his own, more or less, I don't know, financial gain. I'm unsure what his motives were, and they weren't fully explained by the end of it when there was a fight and then just split up again. And then I would have liked for the children to be in it a bit more. Now that sounds weird, but like to have those characters explained a bit more, because I felt the husband, the ex-husband, and the children are a bit detached from the storyline, them being her main motivators. But then it makes sense because she's had so much time apart from them. That's the whole like driving force of the film. But the film does have nice moments as well, like the scene with the couple, like how taken aback when they actually wanted to go have dinner, when she wanted to go have dinner with them too. They were quite funny, maybe a little bit overacting, but I enjoyed that. And just the little quirks, like how I didn't know how to make scrambled egg and how funny she was, like when she was on her own, like between the two, just really nice. But then she just became kind of a bit unbearable when she like got drunk on stage and just like started having to go at someone. And it's almost like pity. Yeah, you just end up pitying the character. But like from her performance alone, there's something to be had from the film. And I kind of enjoyed it. And then something I was saying earlier, when you have the actors who are playing a real life singer sing rather than taking covers from the actual singer, you kind of lose some of the awe that the film was made for in the original reason, because you're there to hear that suppose she had a voice that was like better than any, but then I haven't heard the voice so far, you know, because they just used her singing instead rather than the actual singer. So I'm listening to the songs thinking, yeah, this is all right, but it's not as good as what people are actually like enthralled to write this film for. So that I feel detracts from it, especially when it's like a biopic. So other than that, I relatively enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's not really music that I was interested in anyway. So adding to that it sounded like sounded nothing like Judy Garland, understandably. And I prefer actors to actually try sing themselves rather than lip sync. I feel it still feels a bit more authentic. But yeah, like you say, so I didn't really like the music anyway, and then not having it actually be the voice of Judy Garland was kind of a bit jarring. Ross, do you have any connection to Judy Garland's music?
I mean, not particularly. I've seen The Wizard of Oz and that's about it. But I think the point in that was that she's like getting old, getting on a bit, and she's losing her voice, which is why they didn't put in Judy Garland's actual voice, because she's not meant to sound that good, which is why she doesn't want to sing in the first place anymore. Which is why I think they might have done that. But the film itself, I don't think the plot was very strong. And I think one of the problems is with it is that you need to get a bit more out of her relationship with people. Like, it falls flat because there's not really many properly developed relationships between Judy and anyone else. What I did like about the film is it's a bit different in the way they focused on the like last year and a half of her life, which is quite a different way of doing things. But as you say, kind of throwing in flashbacks in that I think that takes away from it a bit as well. Like, I don't think it was bad. I didn't think it was bad at the start, kind of showing her past and showing what she's like now, but they didn't need to keep putting that in throughout the film. It just didn't really work. But yeah, and also with the film, I mean, as you say, great Renee Zellweger performance. Like, it's really a credit to her acting, because you watch this and you watch Bridget Jones and she can do either like fantastically. So it really is a credit to her. But like, yeah, it's just such a sad and tragic story, kind of just dominated by by drugs and stuff. But there's not really a happy moment in the film, bar kind of the moments with the two guys.
You can get some ratings. Start with you, Mason.
I think the main reason this film is like even spoken about is because of Renee Zellweger's. I gave this film a 7.5 solely because of Renee Zellweger's performance.
Ross?
Yeah, really driven by Renee Zellweger's performance here. So I gave it a 7.2.
Matty?
Yeah, Wagger's performance was pretty damn good. I originally gave it a 7.3, but I think in terms of being watchable, I might have to bump it down. So I get maybe a 7.1.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner's performance is really good, but I only gave it a 6.6. And we'll move on now to my pick, Walk the Line from 2005, a chronicle of country music legend Johnny Cash's life from his early days on an Arkansas cotton farm to his rise to fame with Sun Records in Memphis, where he recorded alongside Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins. Directed by James Mangold, who co-wrote the script with Gil Dennis, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, with the former nominated for Best Actor and the latter winning Best Actress. The film was also Oscar nominated for editing, costume design, and sound mixing. So I picked this film mainly because I like Reese Witherspoon. She's probably my second favorite actress, mainly for her work in Legally Blonde and Election. So it'd be interesting to see what an Oscar-winning Reese Witherspoon performance would look like. And she didn't disappoint. I don't think she was like amazing. Like it didn't strike me as like, yeah, she should definitely win the Oscar here, but she was really good at doing something that was really different. But I knew nothing about Johnny Cash. Couldn't name a song. Didn't even know if he was alive or dead. I didn't do any research beforehand. I wanted to just see if there'd be a surprise whether he's alive or something like that. But so I knew nothing about him going in, and was not expecting a musical biopic to open in a prison in the way that it did. And I thought that was quite an engaging way to open the movie with the sound and the way the camera moves into the prison halls. And I like the shot of the open road when he leaves his little house in the country for the first time, having seen the tragedy that he suffered with his brother dying and everything like that, and his dad basically not loving him really, and preferred just blaming him for the death of his other kid. And so I like that shot. You can see like the wide open road. He's got all these opportunities ahead of him, and then eventually he goes off to the Air Force, and that's where he finds his guitar, and then it goes from there. But like clearly he's a pretty affable family man. Like he's not a bad guy at the start. Like loves his kids, looks after his wife, but is clearly desperate for someone to share in the excitement that he has for his music, because that's his true passion. And his wife is pretty much never like reciprocating those feelings, and she's putting a downer pretty much on his whole career ambitions, which is not a great look for her. I don't know if she was like that in real life, but there you go. So he ends up being kind of fixated on June Carter, which is Reese Witherspoon's character. And I like the diner scene when they first kind of have a proper interaction. They felt like a long conversation where she's like lost her voice from singing. And I didn't really know, this is where I was like, I didn't know that Reese had this kind of performance in her. And I don't think she's ever done like a real accent change. So seeing that was quite surprising, and she carried that off well, and I thought they had good chemistry. And I like their connection. Like both suffer from, it's not developed like massively, but both suffer kind of from this religious guilt, because obviously his brother that died he was like he wanted to be a preacher, and he's reading the Bible and whatnot, and he has his faith questioned by the record producer when he first sings his song. He's like you're singing the song like you don't believe in God. They don't really expand that much on it, but clearly that maybe was an issue for Johnny Cash in his life, like a kind of a crisis of faith. And as well with his brother dying as well, like the kind of a extra layer to that is obviously Joaquin Phoenix, River Phoenix, dying, his older brother at a young age. So another extra layer of emotion to that plot point. But then you have Reese Witherspoon's character, June Carter, like she's admonished by a woman in the shops because she got a divorce. And it's like, you can't get a divorce, that's like an insult to God or whatever the woman says. So both have this kind of religious guilt as another way to connect them. And I thought that's kind of what sustains the film. Like, it's not massively original. It's a pretty standard biopic, but what kind of sustains the film is it's basically a love story between these two people. And it's a bit mad how long it took them to actually end up together. Like, I knew he had the first wife. I just assumed like that first wife would be gone within about half hour. It's like, okay, so he's with Reese Witherspoon now for the rest of the film. So it's a bit shocking that it took so long for them to get together, but that kind of kept the film going, that kept you interested. But the second half was where it just came a bit long for me, not gonna lie. Like, he was just off his nut for most of the second half of the film. Although that's the point of the story, and I'm guessing Johnny Cash was like that when he's like descended into drugs and alcohol abuse and whatnot. But it did feel like it's just repeating itself. And I mentioned to Mason earlier, like, I couldn't find the theatrical cut of this film. I could only find the extended cut, which was 2.5 hours, whereas the theatrical cut was 2 hours 15. So maybe those extra minutes didn't help in terms of the film dragging a bit, but got to go with what I've watched, and it was getting a bit long. And then ultimately, and it's a nice ending, like ultimately he gets with June, and that's when he's truly happy for the first time. The love story's finished, and now he's sobered up, and they live a long, happy life together. So it was like a pretty good film, good performances in the leads. Not something I probably will revisit, but Mason, what did you make of it? I think this was your first watch as well.
Like when I was speaking to you earlier about it, I almost wish that I could have found the shorter version to watch, because although it was only 15 minutes extra footage, it really felt like it made a difference. Like once you told me that there was a shorter version, I was like, yeah, this film is dragging at the moment. I'll have to agree with what you said. Really, it feels quite strong at first, and then it just drags. It just falls a bit flat, and I feel like I'm continuously seeing the same thing over and over again. Where, like, especially with his attempt to get into a relationship with Reese Witherspoon, she's continuously nice to him, and then she's like, "Don't speak to me," and then that happens about 4 times, and you continue to be on drugs and stuff like that, and there's no real progression. It's just continuous. But I guess obviously when you've got these types of films, it has to be kind of truthful to what's happening. You can't just fast forward, and you have to show that this was an issue for so long. Other than that, really, I liked the two leads' performances. I think they really boosted the film for me, and I think their chemistry together is similar to the vibes that I got with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper's performance, where you do truly believe this sort of love story between the two. Again, as well, like you said, the only criticism I have really is that it takes so long for them to get together, which, like I've said already, you can't change what clearly happened, and it happened at that pace in real life. But for the audience watching it, they only really get together within the last 20 minutes of the film. She's always there sort of supporting him, but that's it. And then she gets married in between, and her marriage is literally 2 seconds long. The one that he sort of speaks to her about when they're in the theatre. And then his wife, I just didn't understand his wife or her motives. Her acting wasn't enjoyable at all. But at the same time, it was just like, it's just a bit long, isn't it? Like, every time she was on the screen, I was like, oh, just for fuck's sake, fuck off. Like, I literally wanted him just to cheat on her with Reese Witherspoon, and I wanted to see that on my screen more, instead of him trying so hard with this woman, and she's just like, don't come in this house and speak about your career. So, yeah, I think I enjoyed the film, and I really loved the scenes of them two on stage and kind of watching their relationship, particularly at the beginning, and then I guess more so at the end. But yeah, it's an alright film. I think it has some good scenes and stuff, but I don't see myself really needing to rewatch it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed their chemistry on stage, and obviously that's a connection they did have, was through music. And I mentioned the idea of having this religious connection as well between them. But aside from that, I wasn't sure exactly what she saw in him from what the movie was telling us. Like, he was pretty much a degenerate for the second half of the film. I wasn't sure why she was still hanging around him. They were obviously this happened in real life, but in the film it didn't feel like it conveyed why she wanted to stick with him. Matty, was that an issue that you found with the film? Why Reese wanted to stick around with this guy who was just going off the rails?
Now that you mention it, that is probably one of the key weaknesses. Apart from the scene, maybe at the coffee bar, where you have coffee. This was like a level of interaction that was quite deep, like the first meeting, and then obviously the similarities with music, and then also the way they got along after they had like a semi-affair kind of thing. There you could see it in places, but then the film is so interrupted by his like problem with drugs and substances and alcohol, and then also she'll probably pity this as well, but then she's also co-relying on him to do tours. I mean, she could do tours by herself, but he was the only one that's really pushing her for her to do music, which is something she wanted to do, not for her to be pushed to do comedy or anything else that people felt that was more suited to her. But then that being one of the weaknesses, on the flip side, there's like a mountain of lots of like really interesting stuff here. When you say like the film dragged on, I get why you would say that. I couldn't sleep, so I put this film on to put me to sleep, and I watched the whole thing, and like I couldn't sleep afterwards. I really enjoyed the film. Like, it really captivated my attention for some reason, and being 2.5 hours long, it probably didn't need to feel like that. And the film felt like it traveled like a 15 year time span. I don't know how long it was actually meant to be, but then when it gets to the end and then they say they traveled another 35 years of touring, I was like, whoa, geez, like that's mad. Like it feels like it covers a considerable amount of distance, and then they still have the rest of their lives to carry on together, which is really quite nice. And then also Reese Witherspoon in this film, as you said, is excellent in terms of everything. I've only ever seen her in Friends before, and then like snippets of Legally Blonde. So this was actually really, really nice to see her in this film. I didn't recognize her for the first half of the film. And then also the development of the relationship between June and Johnny Cash is probably one of the strongest developments I've seen in any film. Like the amount of like just goes into it, and like the mixed feelings and like the actions, and then just the hateful words and the different playing parts of both the other parts, and then the kids and everything just always flipping back and forward. It works really, really well. And also a lot of these films talk about like the effect of like childhood on the person that you become, and then it's obvious for both people, especially Johnny Cash, the way his childhood, and particularly one event, and then also his father's unwillingness to claim responsibility for the son's death and almost passing it off as his fault, has really damaged Johnny all the way through his life. I'm not going to say that's like the cause of like all his problems with drugs and alcohol and like the affair or anything, but like it's definitely like his self-blame and just unwillingness to just, well, his father's unwillingness to accept anything is just really, really powerful. And the father, you never really get that kind of, well, you see that Johnny Cash kind of gets past that and encourages his dad to play with his grandchildren, which is quite nice. And you see that Johnny's not so hung up on every single word of his dad. So you get that kind of resolution at the end, which is quite nice. But then Joaquin Phoenix's performance is like usually he's quite a detached actor playing very strange roles, but this is, I felt, his most kind of relatable role. And like his panic and his mania that you see him when he's like getting his withdrawals from the drugs, and then the passion he has for music and everything else, and just the pure like explosive emotional scenes that we have from him are really, really strong. And as touched on before, the wife, you can see like he isn't really the man she married anymore, and like she's not really getting the things promised in terms of like how much he's going to be there, but he is trying. And in that we kind of think that she's maybe being unrealistic and unreasonable about like everything he's given her. And then she's saying, well, you can't talk about work while you're here. And it's like, well, work is his life. You know, everyone else he's ever met wants to talk about work, and now his wife's saying he can't. And then it's kind of like, you can understand how that just pushes him away to then have affairs and just look for an outlet elsewhere. And then obviously that perpetuates it. And we talked about it earlier. It's almost like she baits him into a fight to make him look in an unfavorable manner in front of the kids, leading her to like get probably more favorable custody as well. And it's just, I don't know how much of this is true in terms of like the film, because I like watching biopics because it's interesting to see. It was easy to learn about a bit of history and a bit of like about like a figure just through cinema, because you capture a lot of it and you get enthralled by it rather than have to read a book. But then there's like how much creative license, and I haven't looked into that yet. Yeah. Oh, and then the opening as well. That was also quite strong. What you said, the relevance of the saw that you see. We have no idea why that's important, and then it comes back to the end where we've pretty much forgotten about the saw, and then that's like a nice little re-hit again. And yeah, other than that, I really enjoyed the film. To be fair, it did get quite repetitive, but it kind of just perpetuates the struggle that someone has with drugs. It's not like a snap out of it kind of thing. So that's quite a nice message to go ground home.
Yeah, I'm not a massive Joaquin Phoenix fan. Like, obviously, he's probably the best actor of his generation, but I just find a lot of the roles he takes on, like the characters are just so detached from reality, and he's always just a bit weird. So I felt like whether it's The Master or Joker or You Were Never Really Here or anything like that, it's just hard to connect with him. Whereas I watched obviously this film and I watched Inherent Vice a few weeks ago, where he's like that's basically a comedy, and it's much more easy when you can access him. Like you can really see, I can really appreciate like his greatness and his charisma. And yeah, he's really, really strong in this film. Ross, did you enjoy his performance?
Yeah, I think he really captured the role well. And like as you say, I haven't seen him in that much actually, but like he is in things like Joker where he is really good at acting in it, but it's not like a realistic personal story. But this film really does capture like the reality of it well. And I think yeah, it does get a bit repetitive in the middle, but then it kind of picks up around the dinner table scene with his dad's kind of place. But yeah, really strong performance from Joaquin Phoenix, but Reese Witherspoon as well. She's not in that much kind of serious thing. I haven't seen her in that much apart from yeah, like Friends, Legally Blonde kind of thing. But she was I was impressed by her performance. It wasn't amazingly strong, especially compared to some others this week, but it's still really good. And yeah, I like Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this film. I thought he did a really good job of what he had.
Okay. Start with my rating. I gave this a 7.6. Ross?
I gave it a 7.5.
Mason?
Yeah, I think it just falls a bit too flat. I give it a 7.6.
Matty?
I gave it an 8.3.
And we'll move on to Matty's pick, which is Crazy Heart from 2009. A faded country music musician is forced to reassess his dysfunctional life during a doomed romance that also inspires him. A faded country music musician, that's such a dumb synopsis. Written and directed by Scott Cooper, starring Jeff Bridges, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Colin Farrell, and Robert Duvall. Bridges won Best Actor, with Gyllenhaal nominated for Supporting Actress, and it won Best Original Song for The Weary Kind. Matty, why did you pick this film?
So I've seen Jeff Bridges in a fair few films like Iron Man, Big Lebowski, True Grit, and Tron. So he's an interesting actor, and I quite like. Don't laugh at me. I quite like the films that he's in. But I heard he got an Oscar for this film, and I just wanted to see it. So this was a nice excuse to watch it, and I felt like he could have brought something quite nice to the role. And then upon watching it, it turns out that the character's like a complete layabout drunk. I'm assuming it's not a true story, is it? Cool, not a true story.
It's based on a country musician, but it's not like specifically a biopic.
It's surprising. For me, it's surprising that it's not boring considering how little happens. But I really did enjoy the film and watching just how he acted, and it was almost like a double kind of like it dangled a happy ending in front of you. He almost had it, then it was taken away. Then he clears himself up, and he's just about to get that happy ending again, and the woman's moved on. But the character still understands the worth of the transition he went through when he could have easily just thrown everything away because the woman that he went through rehab for can't go for him anymore. So it's nice that both characters have that realization and move on, and then he starts to write music again, and he physically clears himself up. So it's more of a positive film than say The Star Is Born, where he goes through rehab and then kills himself. So that's so I enjoyed the film in that sense. And then watching Jeff Bridges like even interact with the kid, like he's generally good with kids, and I feel like when he lost that kid, I feel like that would have happened to an undrunk person just as much as to a drunk person. It's so unfair, but just because he was drunk, which is the kind of the way. If you fall over it and you're drunk, it's because you're drunk. It's not because of anything else. Even though sober people fall over all the time, you know. So I feel like that was really unfair, but because he was the only one there, it kind of just came back, and the consequences of that could have been really bad. They could have never found the kid. He could have been, you know, number 2 prostitute in fucking Taiwan. You know, you don't really know what's going to happen. So the severity, like he deserved that kind of that backlash. But you do feel sorry for the character in the end. But yeah, like other than that, I don't have too much to say about it. I just enjoyed the film. I wouldn't rate it really as highly as many other films. Like it's not something I wouldn't go back and watch it again. But I'm glad that I watched it, and I'll probably think of a few more things to say when we come back to me.
Yeah, the kid running away, that was some bullshit. Like he was just at the bar. Like the kid just walked a tiny bit away. Like there was no, like easily could have just easy mistake that anyone could have made. But yeah, when you're drunk, you're just gonna get blamed for being drunk. But I think Jeff Bridges was like born to play this role. I think like a grizzled country singer whose like star is kind of on the wane, and he's going through some issues. Like that's what Jeff Bridges just looks like that off the bat, and he's got the perfect voice for it. Like that voice that he does, it's pretty much the same voice he does in True Grit, or similar enough. That gravelly kind of voice, and it just works perfectly for him. Like, I'm surprised he hasn't had a Star is Born of his own in like the 80s or the 90s. Like he's pretty similar to Jackson Maine in that sense. But I do like how this film is. It kind of like he kind of gets a second chance because he kind of partners up with this mother who's been abandoned, and she's trying to raise a 4-year-old son, and he's the one who abandoned a 4-year-old son back in the day, and now he's getting a chance to try and raise one again with this woman. So it's like, yeah, it's never too late to redeem yourself, even if it doesn't work out, which doesn't in this film. It's never too late to try and improve your situation. But not too sure why Jane, who's Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, not too sure why she's interested in him. He's like, guy's like twice her age, and he's an alcoholic, and she's willing to trust him with her son. Like even when she's trying to think of a reason why she did trust him after the incident happens, she can't think of why. So I don't, yeah, it was a bit weird as soon as it happened, because I was wondering what Maggie Gyllenhaal's role would be in this, knowing that she was half Jeff Bridges' age, and I thought the romance was kind of weird. Mason, is that something you felt watching it?
Yeah, it just didn't really seem that natural, did it? Like I felt like it was kind of just forced upon the audience to accept this very strange romance between the two. Their scenes together they're all right. Like I guess it is kind of believable. But like you said, the reason for getting them together or trusting him to like babysit the kid and stuff like that, like she has her guard up at first when she's like, oh no, like you don't need to babysit, don't do that. And he sort of breaks through that and does break down that sort of barrier to allow her to trust him. But equally, like you said, when you look at the film, you're like, why would you trust this stranger? Like, yeah, he might have been successful previously, but there's no reason for you to do this. And I think that's when the film sort of does just lack this development sort of throughout. Like you've got Colin Farrell's character, who he sort of idolizes Jeff Bridges' character because he's the one who sort of raised him to be this star himself. But even that, like I can just about see a connection between the two of them, and that's pretty much only in the scene where the guy asks for Colin Farrell's autograph, and he's like, no, this is the autograph you really want. But other than that, like, and that's awkward as anything, that entire scene. Like, would you really say that to someone who clearly has shown signs that they have no idea who this guy is sat next to you? Otherwise, they would have been gassed as soon as they walked over to be like, yeah, give me your signature. But then you make this awkward, like, interaction between all three of them. And yeah, I don't know. Like, I think the film struggles to sort of develop and help the audience understand why things are the way they are.
I feel like that autograph scene inspired the autograph scene in Endgame with Hulk and Ant-Man. He's like, yeah, take this. He wants it. But yeah, I think that I just didn't think, like, I actually really like this film, and I prefer it to Walk the Line. Obviously not prefer it to Star is Born, but it was just a nice hangout movie. Like, I enjoyed just spending the time with Jeff Bridges' character, even though it's not terribly original, and it could benefit from like some more like actual like plot points. Like it's kind of just progressive with not an awful lot happening. But I still enjoyed like my time with the character, and even like Maggie Gyllenhaal was really good as well. But Ross, did you think there just wasn't enough going on to kind of hook you in the film?
I mean, yeah, like when I watch a film, I notice this film I couldn't really. There's nothing much really happens, and I don't know whether that's a bad thing or not because I wasn't bored at any point. I did enjoy watching Jeff Bridges' character on screen, but yeah, I think it's hard to kind of put your finger on what the issue is with the film because not enough happens for there to be an issue, but that's an issue in itself. So it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, but as we said, Jeff Bridges is really good in this film. Like he is quality, and yeah, as I say, nothing particularly happens, but it's just like a nice mellow uplifting film, and I never got bored at any point. So it's kind of hard to say much about it, really. Yeah, but yeah, as you say, Jeff Bridges was really good in the film, and that I don't know. I'm just bored of films with annoying kids in. It's just kind of grinding my gears.
I did enjoy the music as well, more than Walk the Line. I've never really engaged properly with like country music, but I feel like if I did try and look at some albums and some artists, I would enjoy it because I do like the vibe of it. It's very, as Russ says, like very mellow, very kind of soothing. And Jeff Bridges obviously singing in this film, I thought his voice was pretty impressive. Another actor who can just like, if you need me to sing, yeah, I can sing, whatever, I'm talented. Matty, is the music something you enjoyed about the film?
I did enjoy it, although it wasn't very memorable. Like if you ask me now to like even hum a bit of it, I couldn't remember it, but I remember it did put me at ease. Yeah, the whole film, he's a very relaxing actor to watch usually. Like I think like The Big Lebowski, like that's it should be quite a stressful film, but the way he's just so relaxed about everything is quite interesting. I think the only film I've seen that's kind of converse to that is the one with Chris Hemsworth in it. What's it called?
You talk about
Bad
Chris
Times
Pa-
at the
Chris-
Bad Times at Bad Times at the El Royale. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. That's quite a stressful film because things go south for him there and he doesn't take it so nicely. But yeah, touching on other things like Maggie Gyllenhaal, like it's like I have no idea why she went for him, but it's like her acting is so good that it's like so clear how smitten she is, and also how conflicted that she knows. Like she agrees with the audience, like I shouldn't be going for this dude because he's literally a mess and he's like probably going to die at any point anyway. But the acting speaks for itself and is just so strong, and shows that confliction anyway. And then also Colin Farrell, I really like him in films, and I just hope there'd be more of him in this. It doesn't need to be, but it's just interesting watching him do roles that are so far out from what he usually does.
Okay, we can get our ratings. Start with you, Matty.
I gave it a 7.5.
Mason?
I just think it's really forgettable, so I gave it a 7.2.
Ross?
Yeah, I think this is similar to Judy in the sense that it's really performance driven by Jeff Bridges. So yeah, I gave it also a 7.2.
I like the film, but yeah, it's not a tremendous film, so I gave it a 7.4. So in terms of our average ratings for this week, we've got A Star Is Born at number 1 with an 8.5, Walk the Line at number 2 with a 7.8, Crazy Heart at 3 with a 7.3, and Judy at 4th with a 7.1. And in terms of where they fit into our overall standing, Star Is Born in at number 8. We've got Walk the Line at number 35, Crazy Heart at 38, and Judy at 42. 44 films in total that we've done so far. And now we can move on to our Actor of the Week. Start with you, Ross.
So I could have gone with Ronnie Zangwanger, but instead I decided to go for Lady Gaga. I think the role was really like tailor-made for her, and like it's just so fitting for her as an actress, and I don't think she'll ever get a more fitting role as she could possibly do. So yeah, I went for Lady Gaga. Absolutely smashed it.
Mason?
I went for Bradley Cooper. I think like his chemistry saved like Lady Gaga on screen, and generally his whole performance. I can't think of one scene of his that I don't like or where he didn't portray enough emotion for me or anything like that. I think he was just solid all round.
Matty?
Yeah, Rooney Waslib Schwarzenegger was really strong, to be fair. But then again, I think I probably have to give it to Reese Witherspoon just because it came so natural to her. I felt like parts of Joaquin Phoenix's performance were still slightly inaccessible, but to her, it's just unquestioning. Like, she is that character when she's on the screen. So it's just, I just have to give it to her.
Yeah, I also thought Ronald McZellweger was really good. But like Mason, I also went for Bradley Cooper. I think it was just the way he was able to transform himself, the voice, and the fact that he was directing. This was a passion project for him. It's just a real landmark in his career, and he's going to go on to probably even bigger and better things. Okay, so as of this week, I've abolished the KG Awards. So we're going to have a unique category for each week, depending on the selection of films. And since we did movies about musicians, this week is a song of the week. Mason, what was your favourite song out of the 4 films?
I feel like A Star Is Born has had the strongest songs consistently. And the one I always found myself listening to the most, I think it's kind of unfair because I've obviously watched A Star Is Born before, and then all of these films are new to me. So I chose I Don't Know What Love Is from A Star Is Born.
Ross?
Yeah, I also went for a song from A Star Is Born. I really like the song Ring of Fire, but from A Star Is Born, I went for Shallow. Just like that scene when they're on stage, she sings it, and she like sticks her arms out, it just gives me goosebumps. I love it. Shallow.
Matty?
A Star Is Born has probably the strongest of all the songs, but for that reason I don't really want to go for them. So I kind of sidetracked and I went for Ring of Fire, just because like that's when that song played, like that was the most prominent song from Johnny Cash's like music that I actually knew really well. So when that came, it really tied everything together, and it made the transition smoothly into this boy all the way to Johnny Cash. So that's when the film was kind of okay, cool, this is where we're going.
Yeah, if I was being like completely honest, it would be Shallow. I really like the song, and that's attached to one of my favorite movie scenes like ever, realistically, that the whole Shallow sequence. But trying to be a bit different, I went for Hold On You by Jeff Bridges in Crazy Heart. It's a really very subtle song, like a lot of the songs in that film, but I find it quite catchy and quite refreshing. I wish this was a Pop Vinyl Award. Ross, any thoughts?
So this one I did a Star Is Born as well, but I did Lady Gaga with her like drag makeup on at the start. I thought it was pretty cool, and I really like her character in it. So I went for that.
I also went for Lady Gaga as Ali, but holding the mic in Shallow, just as she's about to belt that note out, maybe even sticking her arms out, maybe something like that. Either one would be pretty cool. Okay, that's it for this week. We're at Corona Cinema on Twitter, coronacinemapodcast.wordpress.com. Listen on Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean. Next week, 21st Century Horror. Alternatively, just Jordan Peele and Ari Aster week. But Us, Get Out, Midsummer, and Hereditary. Until then, go well.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I get really itchy legs. Run, it was like so itchy, and my back hurts.
That's a new one.
Oh, no,
Back pain, energy legs. What could be worse?
You say back pain energy?
Yep.
Like big
That's
dick
exactly
energy.
Big
Back pain energy.
Back pain
energy.
I've definitely got back pain energy.